All right, so you want to learn English quickly, huh? Well, lucky for you, we're diving deep into a whole bunch of articles and YouTube videos you sent our way, all about making that happen. We're talking tips, tricks, maybe even debunking some myths along the way.
It's pretty amazing, actually. A lot of these sources, from like English Path's super structured way of doing things to beer biceps more, well, unconventional advice, they all kind of agree on one big thing: immersion. Like they're saying, don't just study English, you gotta live it, you know?
So less about hitting the books and more about changing your whole environment. What are some ways to actually do that?
Well, English Path suggests something pretty simple, like just labeling everyday things around your house with their English names.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it sounds super basic, but think about it. You're constantly seeing those words, right? Like without even realizing it, you're learning.
That's a really good idea. I can see it now, like labeling everything. The coffee maker, the remote, the
Exactly. And Beer Biceps, he takes it a step further. He's all about watching English stuff you actually enjoy, like cartoons, sports, anything that grabs you. It might seem silly, but you're still training your ears to how English actually sounds, you know, the rhythm and all that.
So ditch the boring textbooks and binge watch Netflix. I'm liking this theme.
Right. And don't forget about actually using the language. Lingua Marina, she's big on actually being able to talk to people. She says if you want to use English in, a foreign country, speaking and listening, those are your top priorities. Spend like 80% of your time on those. Makes sense. You got to get your ears and your tongue working together.
It's like learning an instrument. You wouldn't just read about it, you got to play it.
Exactly. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about active learning. It's not just about absorbing stuff, it's about like really engaging with it. English Path recommends watching stuff with subtitles, but don't just read them passively. Pay attention to how they build sentences, how native speakers actually say things.
Like taking notes while you read.
Yeah.
You remember it better if you're really thinking about it. What about other sources?
Beer Biceps. He's got this interesting idea. He says, use an ICSE tense book. It's for simple English stories common in Indian high schools. They focus on super clear language, which can be great for understanding grammar.
Oh, that's a cool approach. Focusing on simpler sentences first, like building a foundation. I love how each source has a different take on this active learning thing.
Yeah, like Lingua Marina. She's all about understanding the whole meaning, not getting stuck translating every single word. You get a more natural feel for the language that way.
That's so true. I get lost in the details sometimes. It's about getting the message, not just decoding the words. How does all this apply to reading and writing?
English Path says, start with shorter stuff that you're actually interested in. As you get better, you can move on to harder things. They also talk about using context clues to figure out new words, like solving a puzzle.
I love that. Instead of running to the dictionary all the time, you're training your brain to figure it out.
And for writing, start small, even a few sentences a day. The key is to do it regularly. Experiment with different styles, get feedback. It's all about getting those words flowing, building those writing muscles.
Solid advice. We can't forget about technology and AI though, right? It's everywhere these days.
Totally. All our sources are talking about the amazing resources we have now. English Path loves language learning apps, personalized lessons, all that.
I've used a few of those. They're really helpful for vocab and grammar, especially when you're on the go. What other techie stuff is out there?
English Path talks about this thing called shadowing. You listen to a native speaker and try to copy their pronunciation perfectly, like a virtual coach.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I can see how that would help with sounding more natural. Anything else, like any really out there uses of technology?
English Path actually suggests using AI for practicing storytelling. Imagine that, like having a digital partner to help you write stories.
Whoa, that's wild. It's like a personal writing tutor available all the time.
Yeah.
Technology is really changing how we learn languages.
Speaking of AI, Ankur Warikoo, he's an entrepreneur, motivational speaker. He created this whole 90-day English challenge using ChatGPT. It's broken down into phases, conversations, vocab, grammar, pronunciation, even real-life interactions.
That's intense, a 90-day challenge with AI. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, we'll dive into that later. But for now, remember, even with all this tech, your mindset is super important.
So it's not just about the tools, it's how you use them, right? What kind of mindset stuff can help us learn English better?
Beer Biceps, he's big on self-improvement. He says you got to put your ego aside. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Learning a language, it makes you vulnerable, and that's okay.
That's a good point. It's easy to get discouraged, but mistakes are part of the process. I guess you could even say they help you learn faster.
Exactly. And the EF Go blog, they're all about tips and resources. They say you got to celebrate your progress, even the small stuff. Use positive self-talk. Focus on how far you've come, not on what you haven't mastered yet.
It's like giving yourself a little reward every step of the way. Keeps you motivated. What other mindset advice did they give?
This one's kind of surprising. Beer Biceps actually recommends meditation, for clear thinking and better speaking.
Really? Meditation for English. That's a new one. How does that work?
He says a calm mind helps you process information better, which is essential for learning a language. He even suggests specific meditation techniques to boost your focus.
That's fascinating. Quieting all the noise in your head so you can absorb new stuff. Makes sense, I guess.
Oh, and Ankur Warikoo has a really important reminder. Don't get so caught up in English that you forget your own language and culture. Be proud of where you come from.
Absolutely. Learning a new language should be about adding to who you are, not replacing it. We've covered so much already, it's amazing. Immersion, active learning, tech, mindset.
Yeah.
And we're just getting started.
It's kind of cool how all these sources, even though they come at it from different angles, they all agree on some pretty basic stuff for, getting good at English fast.
Okay, lay it on me. What are the golden rules?
Well, first off, consistency is key. Whether it's labeling stuff around your house, watching English shows, practicing your pronunciation, it's all about making English a habit, Like those little things you do every day, they add up over time.
So it's like going to the gym, but for your language skills.
Yeah.
Got to stay consistent to see results.
Exactly. And another big thing is finding what works for you. Everyone learns differently. Some people love reading, others like podcasts, some need to talk to people. The trick is to figure out what keeps you motivated, what makes learning fun for you.
It's all about personalization, finding your own style, your own rhythm. And speaking of motivation, one thing that stuck with me was how much they talked about mindset. It's not just about techniques, it's about your attitude towards learning.
Totally. Beer Biceps, he's always talking about growth. He says you got to let go of that fear of messing up. See mistakes as stepping stones, not roadblocks.
It's a total mindset shift, right? Instead of getting down on yourself, you see mistakes as feedback, a chance to get better.
And the EF Joe blog, they're all about practical tips. They say positive self-talk is huge. It's easy to focus on what you're not good at, but celebrating those small wins, that keeps you going, builds your confidence.
It's instead of saying, I'm not good enough, you say, hey, look how far I've come. It can make a big difference.
Here's something you might not expect. English Path actually recommends using translation, as a learning tool.
Really? I thought the whole point was to avoid translating.
It might seem counterintuitive, but the process of actually translating, instead of just using Google Translate, it can really help you understand both languages better.
So instead of just getting the quick answer, you're comparing the two languages, digging into the details. It's like being a language detective.
Exactly. You start to notice all these subtle differences, how sentences work, how idioms translate, even how simple words can have different shades of meaning depending on the context. It's pretty cool.
I'm starting to see how translation can actually be a really useful tool. Another thing that kept popping up was storytelling. English Path, Ankur Warikoo, even Beer Biceps talked about it.
It's interesting, right? Storytelling is this universal thing. It connects us. It's how we learn, how we teach. By practicing storytelling in English, you're not just improving your language, you're tapping into this deeper level of communication.
It's like taking your English skills to the next level, from textbook to real-life conversation.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be complicated stories either. Even little anecdotes or using AI to help you write can really boost your fluency.
Yeah, it's about finding your own voice in English, your own way of expressing yourself.
Okay, so we've talked about personalization, finding what works for you. But there's also something to be said for structure, right?
For sure. English Path, they have all these courses for every level, from beginner to advanced. Having a teacher, a structured curriculum, a community of learners, that can be super helpful, especially if you need that kind of guidance.
It's like having a roadmap and a support system to guide you through the whole language learning jungle.
Okay, now let's talk about making it fun. A lot of the sources talked about gamifying your learning. English Path mentioned language apps and online games, where you practice grammar and vocab without even realizing it.
Oh, I love that. Turn learning into a game. It's way more engaging.
Totally. Even Beer Biceps, who's not exactly traditional, he suggested watching cartoons in English. It's all about finding those fun activities that sneak in some learning.
So watching SpongeBob is officially studying now, right?
The main thing is to make it enjoyable. And don't underestimate the power of community. Almost every source talked about connecting with other learners.
It's true. Language is all about communication, right?
Yeah.
Having other people to practice with, to get feedback from, it can make a huge difference.
English Path talked about online communities, language exchange groups. There are tons of forums and social media groups out there. It's like having a global network of English buddies.
I love that. Okay, wrapping up this part of our deep dive, one last thing that really resonated with me was the importance of celebrating your progress. It's so easy to focus on what we haven't learned yet, but acknowledging how far we've come, that's what keeps us motivated, keeps us positive.
For sure. It's about shifting your focus from I'm not good enough yet to wow, look how much I've learned already. It might seem small, but it can change your whole outlook.
It's like giving yourself a pat on the back for all the hard work you've put in.
And remember, learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. There will be good days and bad days. The important thing is to keep going, keep exploring, keep that goal in mind.
And to enjoy the ride.
Exactly. Okay, let's move on to the final part of our deep dive. We'll talk about how to take all this awesome advice and create your own personalized plan for learning English.
You know, it really hits you sometimes how learning a new language, it's not just about the words.
Right.
It's like opening up this whole new world, a new way of seeing things.
It really is. You're not just speaking English, you start thinking in English. Your whole perspective shifts, you know?
So we've gone through all this advice from English Path, Beer Biceps, Lingua Marina, Encore Wariku, even the EF Go blog, immersion, active learning, using tech, mindset, the whole shebang.
Yeah, so many different ways to approach it. It's been fun.
But now the real question is, how do you, listening right now, take all this awesome info and actually make it work for you? Like on your own English learning journey.
That's the key, right? It's not about blindly following every single tip. It's about finding what clicks for you. What are you excited about? What fits your style? What helps you learn the fastest?
It's like creating your own personal recipe for learning English. You take all these different ingredients, mix and match until you find the perfect blend.
Love that. And remember, there's no one right way to learn. The important thing is that you're consistent, you're having fun, and you're making progress, moving towards your goals.
So to all our awesome listeners out there ready to conquer English, we say this: go for it. Embrace the challenge, find your own path, and whatever you do, don't give up on that dream of fluency.
And one last thought to take with you on this journey. Language. It's more than just words, right? It's a way to connect with people, to express yourself, to understand each other. Use it wisely, use it creatively, and use it to build bridges, between you and the rest of the world.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So keep learning, keep exploring, and keep that love for language alive. Until next time, happy learning, everyone.